Hello Capricorn, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for August for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you the broad themes to look out for. Please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail each of the key dates and influences particularly critical to your sign. Now, in terms of that broad overview, we have to look at your ruler Saturn, because Saturn is now, of course, in retrograde, but it's repeating within 3 degrees the 90-degree right angle with Uranus, the planet of freedom. And this really dominated the astrological landscape in 2021. We had 3 absolute squares. The last was on Christmas Eve, and the 2 were pretty active in the first part of this year. So as we come into this month, that aspect is really beginning to become much tighter. And also on the first day of this month, Mars, the planet of passion, desire, and of course of impulse, is in a conjunction with Uranus, the planet of truth, freedom, and the unexpected, along with the North Node, all in house 5 for you, which of course is about where we can be most exuberant, where we can sort of feel really good about ourselves in terms of our attractiveness, very much a social zone, but that's obviously got to interact with that Saturn retrograde. So I think you're a sign that has a great appreciation of quality, and whether it's your friendships, your personal possessions, even your ambitions, it's all tempered by certain standards. And I just feel that the potential for there to be extra limitation on your ideal scenario is ramped up at the start of this month, I am afraid to share. However, there are some marvellous things to go into with you, and I think that this is a month where you are going to be thinking a lot about your values, whether it's your self-worth, whether it's around longer term financial planning. And then as the month goes on, I think you're going to be minded to be thinking much more about how you can open up your world, think more about travel, and perhaps getting away from it and being a bit more free-spirited. So lots of exciting information to share with you. And of course, your ruler Saturn is so important. Essentially, Saturn is the ruler of time, chronology, chronos, Saturn. So Saturn, Roman, chronos, Greek. So it being in retrograde in your second house is making you think a lot about your values, but that right angle to that lineup of planets in Taurus at the start of this month could make you feel that things are closing in a little bit. It's not going to be quite so easy to be as spontaneous as you might like. But I've got lots to share with you, so please stay with me. Now, if you would like to ascend above this Zodiac broadcast and embrace more serious astrology, if you give me 3 pieces of birth data of time, date, and place of birth, I can give you a roadmap that can guide you for the rest of your life, but also a 12-month forecast, all based on your personal birth data. No 2 charts are the same, and there's 30% off with my special offer. Please see below for more. Finally, I've crashed through the 100,000 subs mark on YouTube. If you have subbed already, thank you so much. If you've yet to do so, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please tap or click on the bell notification symbol. Thank you. So Capricorn, as you come into this month, there is that colossal collection of energy in house 5. And one of the things with that is that it could bring out the rock and roll in you. You know, if you're someone who really likes to dance and be very vigorous and free-spirited, you may decide to kick back and really go for it and just be very much in the moment. But the Sun and initially Mercury are in the part of your horoscope to do with how you're more closely invested with others. You know, very tight and invested connections, be it romantic or business, or in a friendship sense. The 8th house is where things really mean a lot to us. But it's also the sector of transformation. But as soon as the 4th, Mercury, moves into your sister Earth sign of Virgo, and that's much more open, that's much more about downloading information, becoming much more well informed. It could see you checking out some online courses, or perhaps an academic opportunity, or booking to get away from it all, because obviously Mercury very much influences travel. But not only is Mars, Uranus and the North Node in that conjunction, and the North Node can bring, along with the truthfulness of Uranus, in a very direct way, some realities around your love life. You know, if you've been in a relationship that hasn't entirely been easy, there could be, you know, a frank exchange of views this month, but particularly at the start of the month. But you could be feeling quite pugnacious and want to really push back. So if you are someone who likes to party and be a bit more rebellious, despite the sober reputation that Capricorns have, I think that, you know, especially if you've got a lot of Sagittarius planets in your natal chart, I think the chances are you're going to want to let your hair down at the start of this month. But as it goes on, the square between Mars and Saturn persists through to the 12th, and you may have to take a bit of a rain check when it comes to your expenditure. I don't think the start of this month is the best time to be too risk averse, put it that way. So if someone comes up with an idea that really appeals to you, then certainly check it out. But at the same time, I wouldn't be too free and easy with your resources either. One of your great qualities is that you use your experience and wisdom to check things out in a very thorough way. Few signs do as much due diligence as you. And I think at the start of this month, that's the way to go. So don't turn down opportunities, but at the same time, don't dive into them too quickly. And that's going to be particularly so as Saturn and Uranus close up. Uranus actually goes into a retrograde on the 24th through to the 21st of January. So it's the last of the outer planets to slam on the brakes, and it's going to be the last to come back into forward station. So I think that for you, Uranus going backwards in the 5th house can see you thinking a lot about your self-expression, about your romantic situation, about your social life. Retrogrades can help us to think more deeply. You know, Uranus isn't just about rebelliousness, it's the planet that governs the sky in myth, so it's very much to do with astrology. And, you know, your understanding of where you need to express your talents may need an update, and Uranus can be good for checking out our own motives. So in other words, being very honest with ourselves. So use the opportunity of Uranus, not just through the retrograde later in the month, but in that square with your ruler Saturn already in retrograde, to think about if your talents and flair and creativity are giving you a good return, even in terms of your self-worth, let alone financially. So we don't necessarily have to see the Saturn square Uranus aspect in totally negative terms at all. And also on the 11th, Venus moves from your sector of relating, brilliant place for it to be at the start of this month, and it moves into Leo, replacing Mercury. Now Venus moving into the 8th house can be very, very good if you are a more entrepreneurial person. Someone close to you could actually have some kind of fortune. It may be to do with a legacy, some kind of insurance payout. Good news is possible from the 11th onwards, or perhaps it's your past endeavours can pay off financially around where a long-term investment has been made. But on the 12th there is a full moon. Full moons is where the sun and the moon are in direct opposition. When they're together in the new moon, that can be a time to set our intentions. So with the sun in house 8, longer finance, the moon in everyday finance, it's possible, especially because they square in a T-square, Uranus, in that 5th house, which is much more to do with risk, that some kind of cost can come up that you're not anticipating. But equally, this could be an opportunity for you to use your wisdom and balance risk with your more commonsensical side. Because when Saturn and Uranus are in a positive aspect, that's what they help us to do. Just because they're in the square doesn't mean to say it's all going to be negative. We just need to scrutinise the situation more carefully. So over the following 2 weeks, I think you could be toggling the ins and outgoings in your situation, but Venus can be helping you. Equally, maybe your attitude to your values, the second house, are going to shift because of Uranus's impact on you. You're going to think again, new ideas, new ways of basing your value system can evolve from this particular full moon in a very powerful way. However, from the 12th to the 17th, we do have a crunching opposition between the Sun and Saturn. That's repeated in the last week between Venus and Saturn. And if your financial situation is more fragile, I think it will be revealed then. But I'm not saying this to be fearful. We're all dealing with the reality of this big cost of living change that's going on right across the world. And we all know some of the reasons for it. You know, obviously the war in the Ukraine has been particularly unhelpful, but there are other structural changes that have gone on, particularly in Britain with Brexit. And, you know, it has been hard. A lot of us are having to be much more cautious with our resources. But what Saturn does, and because it's your ruler, this is not new for you. This is something that you've had a lifetime to practice. And that's what I mean about rating your shrewdness, your wisdom, your experience. It can help you to work your way through some tight corners that may evolve with Saturn squaring Uranus through to the end of this year and still come out on top, because you'll find a new novel way to make the most of the resources you do have. And also, don't underestimate your endurance, your strength, which is another part of your legendary set of capabilities that you can deploy when the going gets tough. So when other people are sort of, you know, finding it particularly difficult, this is the time when you can really get going. So I think you can turn that Saturn opposition with the Sun to your advantage. But I think generally with Saturn in retrograde, Uranus about to go into retrograde, and the square between Saturn and Uranus tightening up, and these oppositions between the Sun and Venus and Saturn, I think generally being more cautious with your resources is the right way to go. But I don't think that it should mean that you don't explore any opportunities. Now, from the 16th to the 20th, Venus in that 8th house is actually forging a terrific angle with Jupiter, the planet of growth, also in retrograde, but that's in house 4. If there's something around the property matter that you want to resolve, this is a brilliant window of opportunity to do so. I just wouldn't over borrow or overbid on a property, even if you really, really like it. But some good fortune could come to you with that particular alliance. They're both known as the lesser Venus and greater benefics in terms of Jupiter, so the planets of fortune, and they can cash in for you from the 16th to the 20th. The 20th, however, does see a massive event this month. Mars, the planet of passion, which of course has been, you know, in your 5th house for the first 3 weeks of this month, it moves into your 6th house, where it will be for the next 8 months. This is very unusual, this length of transit, and it's simply because it goes into a retrograde on the 30th of October. And the 6th house is where we can be quite industrious. It's where we can find ways to economize, find ways to be more efficient, to modify our approach. Mars, of course, is about drive. The 6th house can be about helping people. So if you're thinking about a business, anything that's very service orientated could appeal to you. But also Mars moving into this area is great for getting fitter. Now the 5th house energy is wonderful for dancing and romancing and, you know, letting our hair down. But Mars moving into the 6th is asking you to be more self-disciplined, and it's going to go on for a long time. One of the things that fascinates me about astrology is that how much do we pull down the energy from the sky, or or how much does the sky actually influence us, whatever we feel about situations. There's definitely a balance, and the more we become aware of the influence of astrology, the more we can make better decisions to handle the influences that are likely to be coming in. So if you can be accepting that Mars is asking you perhaps to be a little more self-disciplined in your approach, and if you are more of a party animal, that could be a challenge initially. But you can still party, hopefully, if COVID regulations don't really kick in again. I think they might, unfortunately. But you can still dance in the comfort of your home. But I think that Mars in the 6th house is asking you to do it for a more tangible reason than just the pleasure. Now on the 23rd, the Sun makes its way, joining up with Mercury, into your sister Earth sign of Virgo. So if that holiday that you've really been wanting is still possible, or some kind of greater independence, or you can be more spontaneous, try to do so in the last phase of this month, the last week of this month, because it really will be good for your morale. Now, Uranus, as I mentioned before, goes into retrograde the 24th to 26th. Mercury moves into Libra, but not before it makes probably one of the most crucial aspects of the month for your sign in particular, because from the 20th through to the 26th, Mercury's in a brilliant angle with Pluto in your sign. If there's something you really need to scrutinise, whether you need to talk about a contract or get some professional advice from an advisor such as a lawyer or a counsellor, your ability to penetrate deep into whatever it is you need to decipher is going to be extraordinarily high in that key part of the month. But then on the 26th, it's true that Mercury makes its way to the top of your chart, and here it's asking you to think about your worldly interactions, training, possibly reskilling in some kind of way, or reaching out to people in positions of influence, perhaps through job applications. Because the new moon on the 27th is in a very open part of your situation, some kind of travel could be linked to a new work opportunity for some goats. However, it is true to say that Mercury, once it arrives in Libra, is also forging a stunning angle to Mars. So your passion and drive and desire to get more efficient with Mars's help links to your quest potentially for more recognition or a new job that stimulates your mind more. So great to apply for a position as this month draws to a close. But the new moon does square up with Mars. So that part of you that the new moon is asking you to just do your own thing more, be a bit more independent, get out and away from your normal routines, that's tempered by Mars suggesting there's some opportunities, and the overlay with Mercury shows how in astrology it's not all in one direction. There are complex different influences at play. So I think the new moon is asking you to be more escapist, but Mars is suggesting that some kind of opportunity could come up around your work, and that could just limit you from getting away from it in the way you want, because you may actually think, look, I need to take that work stuff seriously. But again, this is where you're so brilliant when it comes to being a tactician. You can assess what's the right thing to do. Finally, as the month draws to a close, the last week does see Venus and Saturn in a clash. And if there is somebody that you're attracted to, perhaps even in quite a romantic and intimate way, this is going to be a key testing point. It doesn't mean to say it won't work out. It just means if there are differences between you that are quite stark, they're likely to be really amplified in quite an open way. Saturn, as you know, is very no nonsense. And Venus can be about relating, but it can also be about money. So there may be an important discussion that you have to have at the end of this month. Perhaps it's a job offer and the money's not quite as you want, or the package. Or maybe you're going to push back and get what you want because Saturn's going to give you the authority and Venus the charm to beguile the potential employer, and you could make this aspect work for you. So as ever with astrology, there's not any one way to look at any one influence. It's always a myriad of different possibilities. But I think your desire to open up your life at the end of this month is definitely going to be a lot stronger, that's for sure. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you for joining me. Stay safe, and goodbye for now.